Okay, having done a group of heavier topics, you might recall if you look back, it's people are joining into this discussion new, and I hope that you're going back and watching the previous videos if you're new to this. That you can be watching now, but I hope you're watching some of the past ones too, maybe all the past ones. I don't know, but one of the things that happened. It was interesting because this was created not for this at all. My friend that I hang out with, who is my lovely assistant in the background here, one time asked me for, she just asked me a question. Asked me basically, what would you, give me a list of things that you think people should do before they die, or something like that. It was just a fun discussion. I think I texted all this to her it as an answer, and these were just things that I was probably laying in my bathtub. I mentioned that before. I'm a bathtub person, so probably laying in my bathtub. This question pops up: what should a person do before they die, or whatever? Because we had these discussions where she'll just prompt discussion, which I like. That's much of what goes on here is really based upon the fact that for some reason she's fascinated with what I talk about, at least pretends it really good. And so outside of this, she asks me good questions, or we have good discussions, and they can be on almost anything. So she prompted this thing by saying, give me a list of things people should do before they die, or something like that. I don't have the question in front of me. And if you look back through the videos, we've already covered a bunch of these, but she's going to read off some of them, and I'll tell you why I think they go on the list, but I have no idea there's 70 some of them, and I don't remember what I put on the list. But I'm finding this an amusing experience to go back and actually, so far, as I recall, so far she's not read back a single thing I don't still agree with having put on the list. So anyway, what did I put on the list? Number 13, visit the place of your dreams. It's an interesting, it's funny looking at it right now, and I say, okay, what did I mean by that when I first put that on there? And sometimes when we read these back, I will know exactly what I was thinking. Where at other times, I'm listening to them kind of the way you would, is read it, visit the place of your dreams. And to me, in my own life, that's meant multiple things. It meant living in Australia for a year. And I remember what it was. I went there as an exchange student. I remember what it was to anticipate that for a long time. I know what it's been to do things like go and race at the national championships and drive my car. These things, it's funny how I get emotional about these. And looking forward to it, and having heard about it for years and go, I want to do that and go do it. And taking my wife to Hawaii and spending most of a month there and things like that. Don't just dream about doing stuff. You got to actually do them. You got to find a way to do them. You've got to find a way to go to the place you dream of. Go to the place that is important and exotic, or whatever it is to you. It only has to be important because it's important to you. And if it's important to you, make it happen. And make it happen today, not 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now, 50. You can't do that because you have no promise you'll be around for that. So be actively going to the place that is of your dreams. Own your own business. That one is for certain. Everyone should do it at some point, somehow. And to me, I would even fall within some parameters. I would really like everyone to own a business that's bigger than self-employment. In our entrepreneur program, we defined a business had to have employees. It had to have at least an employee because otherwise, if it's just you, it's just self-employment. That's if it gets big enough that it's the only thing you're doing, then it's self-employment. Why should you? I think it's almost like voting. what you gain in knowledge about how the world works by owning your own business and being responsible for paying other people and paying the ungodly amounts of taxes that you have to pay, that all of those things, the fact that you can start a business, but if people don't walk through the door, it doesn't do anything. That X amount of them have to come through the door for X amount of time before it pays the bills. Those sorts of things. You will look at an employer different. You will look at the world around you different. You will value things differently. You will understand about prices in a way that you wouldn't in any other way. You own a business. You can do it, and having done it is an education in and of itself if it goes no farther than getting to employing one other person for some amount of time. Fall in love with the works of one author. God, I said some good shit in there. I'm gonna step out of the picture. I'm coming right back. Actually, do this.
No, it's plugged in. Don't.
It's plugged in. I can't take you with me. Oh, come on. This is less than half the books I have of one author, of my favorite author. You know, that this idea that his books, that I own all of this series in paperback, and now I'm getting them in hardback, which is hard in this country because they weren't in hardback here. They were only in paperback. And why does it matter? It's because you find somebody, you fall in love with the way one person writes, and if you're lucky, like me, it goes on and on and on, like 7 feet of shelf or 8 feet of shelf of just the works of one person. That if you're lucky, you'll be blessed with somebody who's prolific, like Bernard Cornwell is, and you'll have the joy of going on and on with how his words affect, or her words affect how you think, and just the enjoyment of that. And the cool thing is, if you could pick somebody, you know, like, I don't know if you can see it up there, Charles Dickens, an entire shelf of Dickens or something like it. You fall in love with somebody like that. The greatest thing, if they're really prolific, is by the time you get to the end of it, it will have been enough time for you to start their works over again and read them again. Because it's enough books that you can't possibly remember everything that was in even your favorite story, which happens to be the one in my hand. Even the greatest book that they wrote, be it this one. It's funny, I don't think I grabbed my other favorite out of his. But even this I can read over and over again, because I'll read all the others between it, and by the time I've read his other 50 books, I can read this one again, and it has enough fresh idea. It's fresh in a way that I can enjoy it all over again. Tell off someone you shouldn't. God, that is so important. Tell off somebody. What do I mean by somebody you shouldn't? Somebody who's your boss, somebody who is your government official, somebody who is your state senator. Yeah, I've done that one. It's somebody. Care about something enough to tell off the person, because nobody else will, because everyone else will respect them too much, or whatever, will put them on too much of a pedestal to get in their face and say, no, you're wrong. Care about something enough to take a stance, even when you're wrong. It's still, you got, trust you enough to not take it anymore, or to not just let it be unsaid. And it might, it might be a police officer in Washington D.C. and your son might call your wife and say, "Well, he didn't go to jail," because I had that experience. And a woman was beside me. I'll tell that story sometime. But the woman was beside me, and all of a sudden we were cohorts in this, and we were telling off this cop who was threatening to arrest us over something so stupid. He was just being a jackass over the most illogical thing. And me and some other middle-aged woman, I don't know from where in the whole country, it was at an event. She could have been from, like us, we were in Washington, D.C., we were both from thousands of miles away, and we both were like, no, we're not going to take this, and you got to arrest us. Either arrest us or get the hell out of the way and shut up. And there's something, it's something that makes you alive. That it's part of being alive is deciding you matter enough to stand up and say something, even if you regret it later, it doesn't matter. There's still something to be said for doing and being in the moment in a way that matters. Be in a real fight. This day and age, men have stopped being men in so many ways. They're being told it's wrong to be men. And the world needs men to be men. That I'm sorry, if a Hitler rises up in the world, it's going to take men. I'm sorry, women, you can hate me all you want. You can't fight a war the same way we can. We can't, the U.S. will never win a war against a major foreign power on the backs of our women. It won't be done. And thank God it won't be done, because if we did, we wouldn't be left with enough women to carry on. But you can't start there. And being in a real fight means standing up and when it gets to that point of this and pushing and you can't always back down. There are things worth fighting for, and there are things worth punching a person in the face for. It is. And the problem is we've removed that from society. I read a story at one point a while back that said that while fighting in school has gone way down, shootings went up. It's because we've taken away the ability to work out shit that you gotta work out. That we used to, you go back, I mean, we had a vice president shot in a duel. We used to stand for something. We used to say, you used to not being able to get away with calling a guy liar to his face and not being willing to back that up. You call me a liar, and I'm not a liar. We used to have to work that out. And guys aren't good at just talking it through until we agree. No, we said, we used to call him out and say, I'm willing to put a bullet through you to defend my honor. And before that, we learned as young people to stand up for ourselves or for somebody else, and there's something to be said for figuring out whether or not you can do that. There's something to be said. And it should happen long before an age and a time where there's guns and knives involved. Start with, can you stand up for yourself? And you've got to know. And so there are times, and maybe I've read and seen things. I'm too old and fat to be a boxer now, but I've always wondered. They always say boxers, there's a difference between the guy who goes to the gym and swings at a bag or swings at a guy in a practice ring and getting into the ring for the first time with another guy who's not on your side, who's there to knock you out, and you're going to knock them out. Everybody's a great boxer till somebody's hitting them. Then the great boxers are still great boxers when somebody's hitting them. I in my whole life of watching boxing only knew one guy who was a great boxer that didn't involve somebody hitting them. And that was Mike Tyson in his heyday. Nobody got to hit him because 9 seconds into the match, the guy was unconscious on the floor. So he's one of the only great. And the question was he a great boxer or is he a great puncher? That might be a different thing. But to me, there's something to be said for one time. It gets beyond the go ahead, hit me. I remember the last time somebody said that to me. I wished I had it in my head at that time that this is a mutual combat state, because there were a couple of witnesses, and now I would say, are you offering a fight? This state is a mutual combat state. Are you asking me to fight? Because he was a loudmouth, and he'd have said yes, and then I could have punched his lights out right there. And it's perfectly legal in this state, by the way. Washington State is a mutual combat state. If you both agree to fight, it is perfectly legal to fight each other in the street in Washington State, including in the middle, like I say, a street, a parking lot. It doesn't matter in this state. As long as it's clear, you both know what you're there to do. When the swinging starts, it's perfectly legal in this state. Every guy, for sure, at some point should face that, and because it tells you a lot about yourself, tells you a lot about. And winning is not the key thing. The key thing is not that you win the fight. That's a lot better, but that's not the key thing. The key thing is you stood the ground and were willing, and you gave and took whatever happened, because up until then it's all bluff.